And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this session.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pankaj.
Thanks, Alois, and very warm welcome to all of you at Flairology. And my name is Pankaj Puana. I look after the facility in here. And today I'll be walking you through the Vista Center and also giving you an overview of how the great Indian single malt whiskey is made. Right. So for starters, we are located here in Kunkolim Industrial Estate. We are about 45 minutes from the closest airport. That's the Dabolim Airport, and we're about 25 minutes from the closest railway station. That's in Madgaon. So the idea to set up the Vista Center was conceived very early on by our chairman. In fact, when we set up the distillery, that's when simultaneously our chairman was also thinking about setting up a Vista Center. But he felt first we need to perfect the art of whiskey making. So until 2018, until we won enough number of awards for a lot of people to take notice of who we are and what we do. So we focused primarily on our core competency, which was making our whiskey. So towards the last quarter of 2018 is when we set up the Vista Center. So our chairman, Mr. Paul John, again felt that the need of the hour was to educate people about whiskey and different types of whiskeys, rather than just having a brand to promote and stuff like that. So the whole idea to set up the Vista Center was to educate people about what whiskey is, the different types of whiskeys there are, and also how to showcase how we make our whiskeys. So if you've been to Goa before, I'm guessing some of you have already been to the distillery. So you're familiar with the style of architecture that we've got. It's an Indo-Portuguese style of architecture that we've gone for. So a lot of detailing that has gone in, like the tile work that you'd see, the furnitures inside, the artifacts and the paintings, they all complement the local arts and culture scene as well. So we hired Mr. Dean DeCruz as the architect, in such a way that there are a lot of people who come in here and they assume that it's an old bungalow that we bought and we refurbished it. But no, we built it from the scratch. So this is the exterior of the Vista Center. Now let's see the rest of the Vista Center. So here, while you enter, this is like your typical Indo-Portuguese style of Namaste. So style of house that you've got. And then we are welcomed into this large lobby that you see in here. Obviously, for some reason, the fan also attracts a lot of attention. Yeah. So it's literally known as the Big Ass Fan for the fact that the company that supplied it is called the Big Ass Fan. All right. So here we have a cafe area. Again, we are directly above the cask cellar. So that doesn't permit us to have any live counters or live kitchens in here. So once we reopen, we are planning to do short eats or cold cuts, stuff like that. This is the pantry area that we have. Again, just a panoramic view of the lobby. So we do have a makeshift gift shop. Makeshift for the fact that, we didn't want to set up the gift shop until we got the license to sell our whiskeys. So during this lockdown, we finally managed to get the license to be able to sell our whiskeys. So next time you're here in Goa and you're trying to figure out where to buy Paul John whiskeys, do not worry. Just walk into the distillery and you can buy the liquor right here. So along with the liquor, we also sell a lot of glassware in here. We sell a lot of bar accessories, a lot of brass artifacts because we do get a lot of tourists in here. Again, we sell books on whiskeys, products made out of cork and different other co-branded products like laptop bags, messenger bags, clutches, and of course, whiskeys. So here's a little surprise if you can spot something that's out of the natural in here again. So again, some more products in here, like flight sets, wallets, different other glasses. And of course, the Glenking glasses, because we use the Glenking glasses exclusively for our whiskey tastings, and we do sell them extensively here as well. All right. So this is just to give you an idea of what we have in here. So we do multiple packages in here. We do just the tours or tours plus tastings and multiple other packages in here. So once the billing is done, this is where our visitors will be seated. And then they're ushered into the AV room for the tour to begin. So this is our AV room. In here, again, a lot of paintings. So interesting fact, whatever furniture that you see here in the lobby, at least, they're all antiques that we purchase and we refurbish them and we're utilizing them. And you'll come across a lot of paintings in here. So if you're familiar with the Goan art scene, you'll be familiar with Mario's name, but this is not done by Mario. It's in fact done by Bianca Mendoza. Right? So it's a totally different type of art, different style altogether. But again, I'm not into art. I'm more into whiskey. So we'll stick to the whiskey part of it. So here, the AV, what happens is basically we give them a lowdown on whiskey. The whiskey 101 happens. We tell them what is whiskey. We have different kinds of questions for them to sort of like prep them up for the tour, right? So a lot of people who come prepared as well, they have their own list of questions. They want to get done with it and then begin the tour. So all of that is taken care of here. There's also a video that is played wherein our chairman, Mr. Paul John, speaks about the vision he has for the company and for the brand. So then after the Whiskey 101 has happened, then we take them out. So our parent company is John Distilleries, which was set up in the year 1992, and we are headquartered in Bangalore. So we have over a dozen brands to offer in the market. So some of the brands we own are your Moncastle, Grand Duke, Black Pelican, Roulette, and Original Choice. So speaking of Original Choice is the 5th most sold whiskey in the world. So we do about 12.7 million cases a year. And again, under Original Choice, we have rum, we have brandy, we have premium whiskey, we have Moncastle brandy, and different other brands. And I'm guessing most of you would be familiar with this as well, the Fireball. So we recently started manufacturing it in Bangalore, and hopefully soon we'll be manufacturing it in Goa as well. So for all of you fans of Fireball, you have another thing to look for in John Distillery's table right now. So apart from these, we also have a vineyard and a winery in Bangalore. We sell under the banner of Big Banyan Wines, Ampersand Wines, and Guana Port Wines are also other brands owned by us. Right? So here again, you'll see some more paintings by Bianca. Interesting fact that she's incorporated a bottle of Paul John in each one of the paintings that you see here. Right? So again, that's the sensory lab where all of the magic happens, where the blends, different samples are being tasted by the master distiller, master blender. And he's also creating new flavor profiles in that sensory lab. So upstairs, we have the chairman's cabin and then the other admin offices. Sort of looks like an art museum in here. You know, if you're here, you can check it out for yourself. Right? So Paul John Whiskey Distillery was set up in the year 2008. So a lot of factors went into why Goa, which I will talk about during the tour. So we launched our whiskey for the first time in London in 2012. So obviously we needed some time to mature our whiskeys. So since 2013, we have won close to about 275 awards till date. So it all began in the year 2013 with the gold medal at the World Whiskey Masters for brilliance. The same year, 4 of our expressions were rated on upwards of 95 on Whiskey Bible by Mr. Jim Murray. In fact, Edited was rated at 96.5. That sort of put us on a global map, you know, wherein people started taking notice of who we are and what is it that we do. So over the years, there have been so many people that, you know, have been trying to figure out, you know, how is it that we make our whiskey? Do we follow the Scottish regulation? Different other things. So that's one of the reasons why we set up the Vista Center. So 2014 was no less, where we won 2 awards at the Whiskies of the World Masters for brilliance, as well as Peter Select Cast. We won the Wizards of Whiskey Awards. We won IWSC gold and silver medals. IWSC is nothing but your International Wine and Spirits competition. Again, the list just goes on. Like I said, 275 So just to skim through it, we have Malt Maniacs from Netherlands. We have Michelangelo from South Africa. We have Oran Moore from Scotland. We have San Francisco World Spirits Competition. We have Tokyo World Spirits Competition, and the list just goes on and on. So I could take at least another 15-20 minutes just to talk about the awards that we have won to save your time and mine. If you're interested in knowing all about it, you could check with Aditya or Louis. Probably in their free time, they would recollect all 275 awards and send the list to you. All right. So anyways, so that's about the brand. Now let's go ahead and see how the whiskey is made. So our chairman, Mr. Paul John, was very specific about what he was looking for in a whiskey. So Mr. Paul John wanted something that was very fruity and floral, something like a tropical whiskey. So he felt Goa, with its tropical climate, is going to bring in those intricacies in our whiskeys, right? Because obviously it's hot and humid, and that also helps us in maturing our whiskeys faster, which during the maturation process, I'll talk about how. And a couple of interesting facts is the importance of water, because there are 3 ingredients in our whiskey: barley, water, and yeast. So water holds an important role because of the fact that we need a lot of it. We need a continuous supply of it, and it must be a good supply of water as well. So we rely on groundwater in here, and thankfully Goa is blessed with a lot of rainfall. We get about 120 inches of rainfall every year. That's on an average. So we kind of like, it suffices the, requirement that we have for the rest of the year as well. So the specialty is the water that is available in Goa is pretty much neutral on the pH scale. It's neither too acidic nor too alkaline. So it's easier for us to demineralize the water that we use. So we just use normal carbon and sand filters to take away any minerals that it has. And more importantly, Goa is the only state wherein we are allowed to sell our whiskeys above 50%. So we have a couple of our expressions which are at 55.2 and 55.5. So we are unable to sell it in any other market because each state has its own laws and regulations. But Goa, we are allowed to increase the ABV of our whiskeys up to 60%. So for all these reasons and much more, we decided to set up the distillery here in Goa in 2008. So right now I'm here entering the distillery. I'm welcomed by this whiff of beer. Imagine you open few cases of beer all together and you're in a closed space. That's how it smells like in here. Because I'm surrounded by the fermentation washbacks that you see. If you're a beer fan like I am, this is beer heaven. All right. So I was talking about 3 ingredients in our whiskey: barley, water, and yeast. So I told you about the water that we use. Now let's go find out where's the barley from and what type of barley do we use. So this is a granary of where we store the barley. So basically, like Louis has already written, we use 6-row barley. So one of the interesting things is that we do not grow any barley and we do not go to the farmers ourselves either. So what we have done is we've outsourced it to a third-party company. So the agency is known as Barmont, which is in northern part of India. They procure the barley that we need and then they also do the malting. So one of the interesting things about the barley that we prefer is that we prefer the 6-row barley. Whereas most of your distillers, be it in Scotland or other distillers in India, they prefer the 2-row barley. So what's the difference between 6-row barley and 2-row barley? 6-row barley has got a thicker husk, whereas 2-row barley has got higher sugar content. There's more starch and carbohydrates in 2-row barley. So what does that extra bit of protein do to our whiskeys? It gives us those breakfast cereal notes. It gives us those malty notes and also the buttery mouthfeel that you get in our whiskey. We attribute all of that to the extra bit of protein that we get in our barley. So barley has got starch, but we need the sugar. So to convert the starch into sugar, first you need to germinate the grain. So that process is known as malting. So basically it is during malting that we decide whether our whiskeys will be peated or unpeated. I'm guessing Aditya has already taken you through what peated and unpeated is. But in case and some of you may have missed it. Peat is nothing but vegetal matter that is partially decomposed over thousands of years. So basically, it's used as fuel. So going back to malting, what happens is the agency that has procured the barley for us, they soak the grain in water, then they allow it to sprout. If they let it sprout completely, they will not have any starch left to convert it into sugar. So they need to stop the malting at a certain point of time. And how do you do that? By drying the grain. You're essentially bringing down the moisture content in the grain. So there are two ways. One, you can use hot air to dry the grain. That's when you get your unpeated barley or non-smoky flavored barley. And if you use peat and burn the peat and infuse the smoke of the peat into the barley, that's how you get your peated or smoky flavored barley. So I'll show you the samples upstairs of what peat looks like and what peat looks like and what's the difference between peated and unpeated barley. So the final product, the fate of it is decided at the very beginning, at the malting process. So here I have spirit receivers. These are intermittent spirit receivers where towards the end of distillation, we collect the humate spirit stored in these tanks in here before it's sent into the cask cellar for maturation. So one of the interesting things about doing a distillery tour is the different sets of smells that you get with every process. It's so important because whenever you're tasting a whiskey, you're able to relate to the processes with every notes, that you're getting, right? So basically that's the stone remover. That's the stone remover where the barley is passed through the equipment and all of the impurities and other stones that there could be is taken away. It basically acts like a seal, takes away stones and other impurities, and they also magnets in there to take away any metal bits if there are in the grain. Once that is done, the grain is sent 2 floors above for the first process, which is milling. But before that, let me show you what it looks like. So what you have on the screen is the peat actually. So we use peat from 2 different regions in Scotland. So like I was saying before, peat is nothing but vegetal matter that has partially decomposed over thousands of years. So peat is found in these marshy bogs where they are dug in the form of bricks. You dry it and you burn it and you use it as fuel. All right. So basically, if you look at the difference between peated and unpeated, you can clearly see unpeated is lighter in color, whereas peated is slightly darker. And on the nose, it's so obvious because obviously peated barley will have those peaty notes or the smoky notes, and unpeated would be like a barley in itself, right? So now that the barley has been malted and we've gotten the stones and other impurities removed from the barley, what is left to do? We need to grind the barley. So when we send the barley for it to be ground or milled, we ensure that there's a particular ratio of the grist that we take. So what's that ratio that we maintain? So basically the grist ratio is maintained for a lot of reasons. Why? Because if we go for a flour-like texture, it will clog up the milk. And if we do it too coarsely, the water will just run through it without absorbing the sugar. So when we set up the distillery, our quality team, they were working on multiple ratios of the grist. And finally, we settled for 20% husk, 10% flour, and 70% coarsely ground grain or the grits. So this basically helps us in a lot of ways. One, it will not clog up the milk. Two, the 20% husk acts as an additional filter bed in the next process, which is mashing. And three, there are more fermentable sugars for us to play with in this particular ratio. So this ratio is very important. Most of the distilleries usually keep it as a closely guarded secret, but here we reveal it to all of you. So if any one of you are there who are wannabe brewers or distillers, you may want to take down the magic figure, yeah, 70, 20, 10. So this ratio is so important that if we were to mess up even a single percentile, the flavor profile of the spirit would completely change. That's why we need to ensure the consistency is maintained with every batch. And if you're wondering how many batches we do per day, we do 4 batches. So to ensure that we get the same consistency with every batch, we have a roller mill. So the roller mill is 2 floors above. Unless you have X-ray vision, obviously you're not going to see it now. But what you see here is the grist hopper. So the roller mill, it's got 2 sets of rollers on it. We program and calibrate it in a way that we get the grist in that particular ratio. So this sort of acts like a funnel, the grist hopper, and from the grist hopper into the mash tun for the next process, which is mashing, right? So barley, when we do the malting, we have activated the enzymes that will help us convert the starch into sugar, and we went for the ratio that was to ensure that we get more fermentable sugars. Now, the second ingredient comes into play, which is the water. So this is a mash tun. It's got a false bottom, which is perforated, and you can see the rake in between. It's got blades of different shapes and sizes at the bottom. It keeps rotating, keeps the consistency of the mash. So with every batch, we get 2 tons of barley. So the barley is being milled and it's sent into the mash tun. So now it's time to add water. How much of it? We do it in 1:6 ratio. For every part of barley, we add 6 parts of water. But we do not add it all at once. We do it in 4 different stages. So the first part of water that we add will be at about 65 degrees Celsius. We let it sparge for an hour. Then we add water at 75 degrees, then 85 degrees, and the fourth and the final sparge is at 95 degrees Celsius. So by that time, we've ensured whatever little bit of sugar is left has been extracted, and whatever enzymes that helped us convert the starch into sugar is also taken care of. So the whole process takes about 5 to 6 hours. At the end of it, we collect the sugar in liquid form known as the wort, W-O-R-T. So wort is what we need, and we send it to the fermentation wash bag. So we are left with the husk and a bit of protein that we have no use of it here. So what do we do with it? We get rid of it using the spent grain silo, which is outside. So the spent grain or the draft is basically used by these dairy farms. They use it as cattle feed. Right? So one interesting fact, the sugary syrup or the wort is also one of your core ingredients in your malt extract based drinks. Ever heard of a Maltova or a Bonvita or a Milo? So the core ingredient is also the wort. So I always joke around here saying that, for a health drink, you stop the process there and get your Bonvitas of the world. For a healthier drink, you add in a couple of more processes and ideally make it a Paul John whiskey and have it. So basically, we've collected the sugar in liquid form. Now it's time to convert the sugar into ethyl alcohol. So how do we do it? By adding in the third ingredient, which is the yeast. So this is the fermentation wash bag area that we have. So we have 14 fermentation wash bags. The capacities range from 16,000 liters to 18,000 liters. Now let's see what's happening in here. So at the end of mashing, we collect about 11,500 to 12,000 liters of wort, to which we add about 3 kilos of yeast. So the yeast that we use is distiller's yeast, and the strain of it is always a secret. Only the master distiller would know, but it's in dry form. So since it's in dry form, it's aerially introduced, and then we let it ferment for about 50 to 60 hours. As you can see, there's a lot of activity happening in here, the bubbles and the yeast also, you can see it physically move. Mind you, it's all the yeast that's doing the work. There are no agitators. These are empty wash bags, right? So sometimes it's very volatile, it's frothing and all of that. It has to be taken care of. And we also use water jackets. You can't see it right now, but there are water jackets around the wash bag. That way we are able to regulate the temperature of the wash bags. So in 50 to 60 hours of primary fermentation, the yeast starts breaking the sugar into ethyl alcohol. There are other chemical compounds. There's carbon dioxide. There's heat because it's an exothermic reaction. And more importantly, there are a lot of congeners being built in. So what are your congeners? Congeners are nothing but your fruity esters. So at the end of 60 hours, the percentage of alcohol that's been naturally produced, it's at about 6 to 6.5% ABV. So at the end of 60 hours, we are not done yet. The secret is we let it sit for another 10 to 12 hours. Not a secret anymore since you know about it. But what does that do to a distiller's beer? In that extra 10 to 12 hours, there are more congeners being built in. So a lot of people are always asking and wondering, why are Paul John whiskies, so fruity and floral on the nose or on the palate? This is one of our secrets in here. Longer hours of fermentation. And obviously the type of yeast that we use also makes a lot of difference. And that's why we get a lot of different fruity notes here. So the whole process takes about 72 hours. At the end of it, what we have is known as your distiller's beer or the wash. Distiller's beer for the fact that if we were brewing beer in here, the processes would have been so similar. Maybe we would have added hops after mashing, but otherwise the processes are all so much similar. So what I have in my hand right now is the distiller's beer or the wash. All right. So since you're not here to take a sip of it, I'll do it on your behalf. So on the nose, very fruity. I'm getting guavas, pineapple, I'm getting bananas. So cheers, guys. Nothing like a refreshing glass of beer. Hot, sunny afternoon. Wow. I just go down the entire thing now, yeah. It's got those jackfruit notes, it's got those cashew notes, mangoes, very, very tropical, very fruity. Atharva, I'm not saying it just to tempt you. I'm actually getting those notes, yeah. Okay, good. So this is the distiller's beer. The percentage of alcohol is at about 6 to 6.5, right? Because obviously it's not going to cut it for us, and we are not a brewery. We are a single malt whiskey distillery. So what else do we need to do with the beer now? We need to concentrate the percentage of alcohol, and we need to get rid of certain chemicals that we do not need. So that's where the pot stills come into being. So there are many stipulations when it comes to single malt whiskey. Obviously, the main ones being the fact that single malt whiskey must be manufactured or produced in a single distillery. Second is that malted barley must be the grain that you're using to make your single malt whiskeys with. And third, single malt whiskeys must be distilled in pot stills. All right. So here we have copper pot stills. So in the year 2008, when we set up the distillery, we just had these two stills. The ones that you see in the background, those we built it a few years ago. So these are all copper and designed and manufactured in India itself. All right. So we are using copper for a lot of different reasons. One, copper is a good conductor of heat. Two, copper is malleable, easy for us to work with. And three, copper is known to have this property to neutralize sulfur and other off notes that we may get in a distiller's beer. And we are all familiar, most of the households, they prefer to have copper pots to store their water. Why? Because it also decreases the chances of bacterial infection and contamination, right? So we prefer copper in here. So this is wash still, which is of 12,500 liter capacity. Then we have the condenser in here. We have the chiller for that extra bit of cooling. Then we have the spirit still, which is of 6,000 liters capacity. The same condenser again, the cooler, and then the spirit safe. All right, so we'll get to the spirit safe in a bit. So there are very few distilleries in the world right now who use direct source of heat. We use indirect source of heat. That's why there are stainless steel coils inside through which we pass steam. So at the end of fermentation, we collected the distillers beer, then we sent it to the wash still. We start heating up the contents. The contents vaporizes. Then we condense it. And the first distillate that we collect is your low wine. So if you were to look at it, low wine, it's cloudy. Don't you agree? It's hazy. So clearly, you know, it's got impurities in it, right? So it's got impurities like copper sulfate, methyl alcohol. So just to paint the picture out there, 10 ml of methyl alcohol can cause blindness and 30 ml of it is the sure shot fatality. I'm guessing most of you would have heard of these tragedies related to hooch liquor and all of that, right? So that's your methyl alcohol, which causes blindness or death mostly. So low wines, along with the impurities, the percentage of alcohol is also low. It's at about 17 to 19% right now. But we are still whiskey people, meaning minimum we still need to do is 40. So how good is the low wine for us? As is, not good the way it is. So what do we do with the low wine? We send it to the spirit still for double distillation. So our whiskeys are all double distilled, meaning they are distilled twice. So here we use 2 pot stills. Most of the distilleries in the world, in Scotland, they use 2 pot stills to make their single malt whiskies. There are very few, like Auchentoshan and all, who use 3 pot stills, but most of them use 2 pot stills in here. So our whiskeys are all double distilled. So the same thing happens here. The low wine is sent into the spirit still. We start heating up the contents. The contents start vaporizing. Then we condense it. We cool it down a little further. And when it gets here, this is the part where it gets exciting. I'm guessing most of you have heard of the expression, the head, heart, and the tails, right? So head, heart, and the tails is nothing but the expression that we use to demarcate between what goes into the cask or what doesn't. So this spout here controls the flow of the spirit when we are collecting it, or the head or the tails, which we do not need, right? So let me just elaborate on that a little. So the first batch that comes out of the spirit still, after we start heating up the contents, will still have impurities. So I was talking about methyl alcohol, right? So the boiling point of methyl alcohol is 64.7 degrees Celsius, whereas the boiling point of ethyl alcohol is 78.3 degrees Celsius. So obviously the first batch will have methyl alcohol, which we do not need. So what do? We move the spout towards the head part of it. So the first batch here. So downstairs we have a heads collector where it is all collected. So every distillery is got a benchmark for what they call their new make spirit or what makes the cut. So moving the spout from the head section towards the heart is making the cut. All right. So first, the percentage of alcohol must be between 55 to 70% for us to consider to make the cut. And second, and the most unique thing that we follow here, unique why? Because have a look at the spirit safe again, boys. Because if you've been to a Scottish distillery before, this is the rare sight. Because you can never have an open spirit safe in Scotland. Most of the spirit safes are padlocked by the customs there. But here in India, we do not have the regulation. So they tend to take advantage of that fact by using our sensory perception while making the cut. So it's not just the degree or the timing or the temperature for us to make the cut, but it's actually the smell and the taste. So all of our young distillers in here, they've all been trained by the master distiller to smell, to taste, and only if they feel that this has got the consistency of a regular new make spirit, will they make the cut. So right now, they made the cut, but first let me sanitize the glass. You sanitize the glass with the alcohol that you're going to try in some time. So now you can see, you see the difference, right, between the low wines and the spirit. It's very clear, very clear. And well, let me, so that's the heart. And towards the end of the distillation, the percentage of alcohol drops down and there are fusel oils that we do not need. So we move it back and that's the tails part of it. But for now, again, I'm sacrificing my liver for you guys, tasting the new make spirit since you can't. All right. So as you can see, very clear. On the nose, again, you get those fruity notes, but the alcohol overpowers it because this is at about 68, 69% ABV right now. but you still get those sugary notes. Cheers, guys. I get prunes, I get ripened bananas, I get green apples, and yeah, like the jaggery kind of a note. Otherwise, I'm still not making it up, man, to tempt you. I'm actually explaining it. Alright. So basically, that's all. It tastes like grappa if you've had grappa before. Right? So there's no color of the whiskey that you usually associate your whiskeys with, and not a lot of flavors that you normally associate with your whiskeys. So where is it all coming from? From the final process here, which is maturation. So in the cask of it. So if you ask any one of us here, we'd say 50% of how you make the whiskey is until what we have seen till now. Whatever is done till now, until the distillation part of it is 50% of how the whiskey is made. So technically, we can't call it whiskey now. For it to be known as whiskey, it must be matured in a wooden cask for a minimum of 3 years, right? So this hasn't seen any maturation. So we call it, or you can call it the new make spirit or the heart. So now, and also this one makes for a nice sanitizer. In today's world, everybody is searching for good sanitizers, so you know where to find it, yeah? So now, let's head towards the cask warehouse. But just an overview of what happened here. Downstairs, where we had the granary, where we store the barley. Barley was fed into the chute, about 2 tons of it. Then we got rid of the stones and other impurities. Then we used the mill to get the grist in a particular ratio, 70, 20, 10. Then it was sent into the mash tun. We added water in 1:6 ratio at 4 different temperatures. At the end of it, we collected the sugary syrup known as the wort. So the wort was sent into these fermentation wash bags. We let it ferment for about 50 to 60 hours. The percentage of alcohol that was naturally produced was between 6 to 6.5% ABV. And we let it sit for another 10 to 12 hours for more fruity esters to kick in. So we took the distiller's beer. The first distillate was the low wines from the wash still, full of impurities, low in ABV. Then we sent it to the spirit still. Then we did the head, heart, and the tails. We collected the new make spirit. For it, it had to be between 55 to 70%, and it had to smell and taste right. So again, these are the newer pot stills that we have. So he's Mr. Shivaji. He looks after the plant in here. So thank you. So again, this is a newer spirit safe that we have. So in case you forget, we have it all written in here. Low wine, pink, spirit, stuff like that. So yeah. Great. I'm sorry if if there were a lot of disturbances in there because it's very noisy in here. All right. So now let's head towards the warehouse. So at the distillery, we have close to about 20,000 casks, and it's divided between 3 cask warehouses. So we have an underground cask cellar on which the visitor center is built on. Then we have 2 above ground cask warehouses. All right. Obviously, a shout out to selfie spots. Yeah. What's anything in today's world without a selfie, right? So that's why we have a selfie spot as well. All right. So these are the 2 above ground cask warehouses that we have. So a lot of people who come in here usually, keep asking us, why haven't you scraped off the carbon or the soot that is on the walls, or have you forgotten to paint, you're so busy with the yellow paint that you forgot to paint these. So they come up with all of these cheesy remarks in here. But along with the carbon and the soot that you see on the walls, there's also a fungi known as Baudonia compniacensis. So Baudonia compniacensis is nothing but your alcohol fungi. So the alcohol evaporates, right? So the alcohol is in the air. So the fungi that's on the walls, it's actually feeding off the alcohol that's in the air and it's thriving in here. So no matter how many times we paint the walls, it's always back. So if you check around, you could see the plants, the trees, this building, everything. They have that mold-like stuff. That's the Baudonia compniacensis. If we ask this gentleman to probably stand here for a month, you could probably see Baudonia compniacensis on him as well. But we don't want to experiment with that. Anyways, so that's about the fun, interesting fact of Bowdonia Compagniesensis. There are few distilleries who claim that the unique flavor profile that they get there in their whiskeys is from Bowdonia Compagniesensis, but it's a nice cock and bull story. Yeah. So here we have Cask Warehouse 2, wherein it houses mostly maturation casks. So we have maturation casks, we have experimentation casks, and we have finishing casks. So in Cask Warehouse 2, we have close to about 5,000 maturation casks in here. And one interesting fact is that most of the people who've been to a Scottish distillery, especially the warehouses in Scotland, they would be slightly surprised with the way we have maintained our warehouses. Because if you've been to a Scottish distillery or specifically a warehouse in there, you'd see them using the dunnage method, wherein they have 4 to 5 casks stacked on top of each other. Whereas this, what we follow is the racking method, which is mostly followed by bourbon distilleries. So our warehouses goes up to like 15 meters. So we have close to about 14 tiers in here. So what does that do to us? As in that helps us create these microclimatic environments. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is that the whiskeys that are being matured in the underground cask cellar is completely different. The flavor profile would be completely different from the whiskeys that are maturing in the topmost tier compared to the whiskeys that are maturing at the bottommost tier. So what does that do? We have plenty of options to work with. So the master distiller or the master blender towards the end, because he's sampling each and every cask at least once in 3 months. So for him, he will have plenty of options to work with, even if he wants to create a new flavor profile or perfect an already created flavor profile. So that's what helps us in creating different flavor profiles in the whiskey. So there is a myth, mostly people assuming that a single malt whiskey must come from a single cask. If you're believing in that myth, I'm sorry, but a single malt whiskey can be a blend of multiple casks in there, but it has to be from a single distillery. Right. So anyway, so coming back to our maturation cask in here. So this is a 200 liter American oak ex-bourbon cask. We also work with 250 liter and 500 liter cask, but this is a 200 liter cask. And this is American oak, meaning the wood that has been used is American oak. So you're permitted to use oak to mature your whiskeys. There's American oak, there's European oak, there's Mizunara, Japanese oak. Under European oak, you have Hungarian, French, Spanish, English. It goes on. But most of the distillers prefer the American oak to mature their whiskey. And the last thing that I mentioned was these are all ex-bourbon casks, meaning these casks were all used by a bourbon distillery before. I'm guessing most of you are familiar with bourbon. So one of the stipulations for a whiskey to be known as bourbon, along with the fact that it needs to have 51% corn in its mash bill, is the fact that bourbons must be matured in unused but charred oak casks. So when I say unused, they can never reuse a cask in the States, which is a blessing for us, because we don't have any such regulations. And when I say charred, that means the casks have to be burnt or toasted or charred from within. So as you can see, this is closer to the alligator char. So there are five levels of charring. You can lightly toast it to the alligator char. So there's a different things. So these are so important for the entire whiskey making processes. Because when we're speaking about color and the flavors, right? So it's all from the cask. So just to kind of like, not to put you to sleep now with all of the, chemicals and the science aspect of it, but few important ones. So the oak is mainly made up of your cellulose, hemicellulose, lignans, tannins, and lactones, of course. So basically, just to break it down, cellulose are the components that keeps it tight. Even though it is porous, it's leak-proof. So cellulose ensures that. So cellulose has very little impact on the color or the flavor of the whiskey. Then you have the hemicellulose, which is nothing but your simple sugars. So what happens when you burn sugar? It caramelizes, right? Similarly, the hemicellulose present in it. What happens when you char them? It caramelizes, right? So when it caramelizes, it releases something known as melanoid. So melanoid gives you that very distinct golden brown color of the whiskey. And also you get those sweet notes of caramel and different other notes. So there is vanillin imparting vanilla notes, there's cinnamaldehyde imparting cinnamon notes, there are multiple plethora, and lactones. Lactones also give you more coconut notes and different other things. So there are hundreds of chemical compounds imparting hundreds of flavor notes in your single malt whiskey. So there are a lot of debates If you've been to a Scottish whiskey trail, they would claim there are exactly 175 notes to be found in a bottle of single malt whiskey. You have a chat with our master distiller, he'll say anywhere between 200 to 250. So there's this guy who works at a bourbon distillery who was here. He says there are 400 notes to be found in a bottle of single malt whiskey. So the debate just goes on and on. You could throw in any number and you could still be right, you know. So here again, so all of those notes come from the cask and part of it from until distillation. All right. So now let's get to the Paul John way of maturing whiskeys. So at Paul John, the minimum number of years that we mature our whiskeys for is 5 to 6. So I'm talking about the flagship expression. So obviously, if I'm speaking about the latest entry into our stable, which is Nirvana. Nirvana is the youngest whiskey which we have, which is bottled, which is matured for a minimum of 4 years. But whenever we talk about our whiskeys, we always speak about the flagship. So minimum maturation is 5 to 6 years. And whenever we talk about maturation, it is important for us to also speak about the angel share. So I'm guessing most of you look like a smart bunch of kids in there. So you all know your angel share, right? So basically the amount of alcohol that we lose to evaporation every year in a cask is known as your angel share. So in Scotland, they lose about 2% every year. Whereas in Goa, look at me, I'm sweating like a pig, literally. So you can imagine just few minutes in here, and this is my condition. So you can imagine the impact it has on the whiskeys in the cask as well, right? So the molecules, they expand, and during night it's colder, so it contracts. So there's a lot of things that's happening in here. So, and the heat and the humidity also ensures that maturation is happening at a rapid pace. So we lose about 8 to 10% every year on an average. Because certain casks we could lose about 5%, we could lose about 15%, but on an average we lose 8 to 10% every year. Imagine minimum number of years that we mature our whiskey for is 5, and we are losing 8 to 10% every year. So at the end of 5th year, how much am I left with? I've got like what, 60, 65% left, right? The rest of it is a loss. It's a huge loss. So that way we are able to kind of like compare, not just compare, also prove the fact that 1 year in Goa is equivalent to 4 to 5 years in Scotland. I'm talking about just the extraction part of it. How much we are able to extract from the cask in 1 year, that same extraction, it would take us at least 4 to 5 years in Scotland. So it's safe to assume 5-year-old Indian single malt is as good as a 20 or a 25-year-old Scotch. And that's the reason we never mention the age of our whiskeys on any of our bottles. If you've seen any Paul John single malt whiskey, we never mention the age of the bottle because it's simply unfair. I mean, if Atharva were to walk into a liquor store, he'll see 10-year-old Scotch priced at rupees 3,000, and he'll see 5-year-old Indian single malt priced at rupees 3,000. It's a no-brainer. No, Atharva, you're going to go with the 10-year-old, right? So obviously, to avoid that bias against our own selves, we never mention the age of our whiskey. So we are an NAS whiskey, meaning no age statement whiskey. Couple of other interesting facts is the fact that we do not add any color. Most of your Scotches, they add something known as E150A or INS 150. It is to kind of manipulate you into thinking that it's an older whiskey. Because the most common notion is that darker the color of the whiskey, meaning older the whiskey, lighter the color, meaning younger the whiskey. So to play with you, to manipulate you into thinking that it's an older whiskey, most of these Scotches, they add E150A, but we do not. So it's safe to assume the age of our whiskeys just by looking at the color, meaning darker the color, it should be old, lighter the color, meaning it should be younger, right? So here we do not add any color. We do not add any flavors, of course. And more importantly, we do not chill filter our whiskeys. So if you've seen our Paul John single malt whiskey bottles, with the exception of Nirvana, all of the expressions have something known as non-chill filtered mentioned on the label. So if it's not mentioned on your label as non-chill filtered, then most likely that whiskey has been chill filtered, like your Glenlivet, Glenfiddich of the world. So basically, what happens when you chill filter the whiskey is, okay, so let me just explain what chill filtration is. So if I were a distiller who chill filters my whiskey, I would empty the contents of the cask into a container. Then I would reduce the temperature of it. I would reduce it to sub-zero levels. So when I do that, there are a lot of chemical compounds that tend to solidify in that temperature, like your fatty acids, proteins, basically fatty acids like your long chain esters and all of that. So basically, what happens when they solidify, the turbidity occurs. So what these chill filtration distillers do is basically they take out the solid part of it, the protein, the long chain esters and everything. They can use either metal filtration or paper or, like different types of filtration you have for them. So basically, they just take out the solid or the turbid part of it and pour the clear whiskey into the bottle. So experts feel that 15 to 20% of the flavor profile is lost. Because obviously you're losing the mouthfeel. When you're losing the protein and all of that, you're losing the mouthfeel and the flavor profile is lost. Because what you would have tasted in the cask is not what you get in the bottle. So ours are non-chill filtered whiskey, meaning whatever you would have tasted in the cask is exactly what you get in the bottle. So that's why it is very important for us to retain the color of the whiskey as is and the flavors, and also the fact that we do not chill filter. So you get exactly what you pay for. We haven't done any kind of a cosmetic surgery in here. So what happens if basically sometimes when you pour some cold water or add a few cubes of ice into your glass, that haziness or cloudiness that would form, because obviously we haven't taken out all of the chemical compounds that would have ideally solidified in that temperature. So that's one of the drawbacks, that it doesn't look pretty. But again, as long as your whiskey tastes good, who cares if it looks pretty or not, right? So basically, these are the maturation casks. Apart from these casks, we also are experimenting with a lot of different types of sherry butts in here. So a decade ago, actually, we started experimenting with Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez butts. So basically, I'm guessing most of you are already familiar with the sherry. Any wine grown in the Jerez region typically becomes your sherry. So prominent ones that we prefer would be Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez. So what we did about 11 years ago was the fact that our master distiller, Michael, he went to these bodegas in Spain and he spent, like a lot of time there and selected these few historical casks. So our casks, there are few historical casks which are about 60, 65 years old. So Michael identified the best sherry casks in there, and then we got it here. And we literally use them as finishing casks, meaning we mature it in ex-bourbon casks for X number of years, and then we finish it in the cask that we are looking for in terms of the flavor profile that we could get. So I'll just quickly, it wasn't part of this program, but you guys are listening to me very attentively, at least the guys I can see on the screen. So I'll take you to the cask cellar just to give you a glimpse of what we have in here. Usually for the tours, it's all prohibited. So this is the way to the cask cellar. And trust me, it smells heavenly in here, like a good 15-20 minutes in here. I think Athava for sure will be a little tipsy. Yeah. Oh, wow. As you're climbing down, you can just feel it, it's seeping through your pores and stuff. So I was talking about those historical casks. So these are those historical casks that were used to mature, Oloroso before. And right behind them, those butts that you'd see. So a 500-liter cask is your butt, basically. So these are sherry butts. All right. So what you see behind the Oloroso butts are the Pedro Jimenez butts. Pedro Jimenez is a sweeter, more fruity, like a sherry. Then last year we started experimenting with Tawny port wine butts as well. So what you see there. So I'm not going to venture too deep inside the cask cellar because I could lose reception in here. And we are also the only distillery in India to be experimenting with virgin oak casks. So what you see directly below the light, the brightest spot in the screen, that's the virgin oak cask. So brand new American oak cask. We got it from Cooperage in the States. We got it here. We charred it ourselves, and we are maturing our whiskeys in it. We're also experimenting using it as a finishing cask and stuff like that. And some of the oldest casks in the cask cellar are on the top tier. So that is from 2009. So you can imagine from 2009 till date, the amount of angel share that we have had, you can imagine what's left in that cask. Probably we need to squeeze the staves to fill up a bottle. But if we manage to do that, I think it would fetch lakhs, for sure. Right. So again, we've experimented with some Madeira wine casks, some vintage port wine casks, some Bordeaux casks, and different other aspects of it. So this is a painting by Bianca again to kind of illustrate the angels in here. Because angels share, right? So yeah, some angels look happy, some look a little drunk. I don't blame them. Anyways, so in case you're wondering how many times we use the cast in here, we use it once, twice for most of our expressions. But for Nirvana, we recently started experimenting with third fill casts as well. So technically, just first or second fill cast for rest of the expressions. So these casts look relatively newer than the others because these are virgin oak casts. So brand new American oak casts in here. Right. So for the complete tour, as in, if you want to stare at the cars and spend a little more time at the warehouse, or the cellar, you'll have to come down here physically. Now, to my favorite part of the center, the bar, of course, right? So if you come in ones or twos, this is where you'll be seated. But I'm hoping you all come in a larger group, and this is where you'll be seated. So this is our tasting room. Again, some more paintings by Bianca in here with happier people now in the paintings. Good. So just to kind of, before we get to the whiskeys, just to sum it up, we use 6-row barley, procured it from a third-party company called Barmalt. They do the malting, and based on our needs, if it's a peated whiskey that we're going for, we import peat from Scotland from 2 different regions. If it's unpeated batch, they do the malting accordingly and send us the grain. Once we get the grain here, first thing that we did was get rid of the impurities in the stones using the stone remover. Then we sent it into the mill, got it in that ratio, 70 coarsely ground grain, 28% husk, 10% flour. Then we sent it into the mash tun, added water, 12,000 liters of it in 4 different batches at 4 different temperatures. So we collected the sugary syrup known as the wort. Wort was sent into the fermentation wash pack. We added yeast, let it sit for let it ferment for 60 hours, and we let it sit for another 10 to 12 hours. So more yeast esters, more congeners were built in, and the percentage of alcohol was between 6 to 6.5. So the distiller's beer, nice refreshing glass of distiller's beer, was then sent into the wash still. The first distillate was low wine, full of impurities and low in ABV. So sent it to spirit still, did the head, heart, and the tails. We collected the new make spirit, right? So that new make spirit, we diluted it. Okay, this one I didn't tell you, but in case you're wondering, we don't send the new make spirit as is into the cask. It's diluted to about 63.5 or 64% ABV. Then it's sent in the cask. Minimum maturation of 5 to 6 years. Angel shares 8 to 10%. So 1 year in Goa is equivalent to 4 years in Scotland. And we do not mention the age of our whiskey. We are an NAS whiskey. We do not add color. We do not add flavors. We do not chill filter our whiskeys. And Paul John is the best whiskey in the world, right? Cool. So now that I've summed it up, let's have a look at the different whiskeys that we have in our stable right now. So I would like to begin by talking about Nirvana, the youngest whiskey that we have. And Nirvana is matured for a minimum of 4 years. It's bottled at 40%. So if it's bottled at 40%, so obviously it will be chill filtered. Because when it comes to non-chill filtration, 46% is the flocking point. If you go below 46%, then it tends to, you get those, like the flocculation. Basically, you can see all of these, like protein and the kind of fatty kind of stuff that you see in the whiskey and all that. The flocculation will start. So basically, Nirvana is at 40% and it's slightly been chill filtered. And you'd be surprised or not so surprised when you find out that the most sold Indian single malt in France is Nirvana, actually. In fact, the biggest market for us is, France. We are hoping after this training, it becomes Mumbai. So basically, Nirvana, it retails at 1,500 in here. I like to think of it as an amazing whiskey, keeping in mind a lot of different factors. One, when I speak to a lot of people, who are mainly into blended whiskeys, when I ask them why don't they try single malt whiskeys, they feel single malt whiskey is too expensive and it's too complicated. Yaar, ice mat dalo, yaar, soda mat dalo, ye kya hai, because we are so used to drinking it with, soda, cola, whatever we could get in the fridge, fill it up and then have it. So Nirvana retails at 1,500, so it won't hurt the pocket much. And also it's something that we like to, ask people to go crazy with, try different cocktails, try different ways. So Nirvana,
is the entry-level whiskey for us. Then we have the flagship expressions. So if someone were to ask me, saying that I've never had Paul John whiskey before, which one would you suggest? I would always start off with the flagship expressions. So either Brilliance Edited Bold. They're all matured for a minimum of 5 to 6 years, and they're bottled at 46%. So obviously non-chill filtered. Brilliance is completely unpeated, like your typical Speyside whiskey, sweet and spicy. Edited has got a hint of peat. So this is mostly for us, our Indian palate as well, because we are not used to peat. If we do a peaty whiskey, imagine it being the first whiskey ever. We may never want to touch whiskey ever again, right? So to ease it in, to familiarize our palate with what peat could be like or what it is like, we have edited. So the secret is that the peat that has gone into edited comes from both the regions, Highland as well as Isla, but more of the Highland. Whereas Bold has got only the Isla peat. So Bold is like your typical, peaty whiskey. Again, an amazing whiskey on its own. So Brilliance Edited and Bold, the flagship expressions. Then we have the Select Cask. Select Cask. These are from a few select casks that the master distillers identified in the cask cellar. So these are first fills only. So Nirvana, it could be a second or a third fill. Brilliance Edited Bold, they're always first or second fills. Whereas Classic and Peated, they're always first fills. There's no question of second fills in here. All right. So they're from the cask cellar. Classic is at 55.2, completely unpeated, and peated is at 55.5. So obviously these two are sold only in Goa and international markets. So the next time you are here in Goa, you could probably, if you're thinking of which expressions to go for, you could go for Classic and peated in here. Then you have the latest entrance into the Select Cask. So if not for the pandemic, I'm guessing most of you would have already had, tasted these two whiskeys. But due to COVID-19, we stalled the launch of it. So basically, what we've done with this is Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso Select Cask is we matured unpeated whiskey in ex-bourbon cask for 5 years. And at the end of it, for 2.5 years in a Pedro Jimenez, but for PX Select Cask. And for 2.5 years in an Oloroso cask. So we had Cask Nolia, Cooper Age in Spain. They basically built customized Oloroso casks for us. So we have 250-liter hogsheads in the cask cellar. So we use those casks to finish the whiskey for about 2.5 years for Oloroso Select Cask. Again, the price of it you'll get to know when we release it in the market. Then we have the Christmas editions. So this tradition sort of started in the year 2018 when we released the Christmas 2018. It's literally Christmas in a bottle. My mouth's literally like, I'm drooling right now. I love a lot of desserts and stuff. So basically what happened is we had 3 whiskeys. We had unpeated whiskey in ex-bourbon for 7 years. We had peated whiskey in ex-bourbon for 7 years. And we had unpeated whiskey in an Oloroso butt for 7 years. At the end of 7 years, we married them together. And then Christmas 2018 was born. 2019 was the same, but with the exception of Oloroso, we used the Pedro Jimenez. 2020 is somewhere in between in terms of the flavor profile. I can't reveal much, but it's already been created, the flavor profile. So yeah, that's all you get to see of the 2020 before I slowly move to that. Yeah. So I think you guys were the first ones to even catch a glimpse of 2020 canister. So I'll just tease you a little longer. Yeah. All right. So anyway, so we have the XO. XO, India's first and only barrel-aged brandy. And the reason we can't call it cognac is the fact that we are in Kunkolim in Goa. If we were in cognac in France, we could have definitely called it cognac because the ingredients and the way you make cognac is what we have replicated in here. So Uni Blanc is a grape that we've used for XO, and we also matured it in French Limousin oak cask for about 8.5 years. So that's where Paul John XO comes into being. Then we have the Kanya. Kanya is the first of the releases, first of the zodiac sign releases that we have. Kanya is nothing but your Kanya Rashi, which is also your Virgo. So if you're a Virgo, it is a must-have. You must have it. Or else it's incomplete, I guess. But one of the most interesting facts is that Kanya is the best Asian whiskey of the year 2018. And Jim Murray, I think it was Jim Murray who said that, you know, it's not notes of honey that I get in a whiskey, it's honey in itself that I get in this bottle of whiskey. So very interesting, lot of interesting reviews about Kanya. And it still retails at 18,000 here in Goa. I think we should have a bottle or two somewhere in the shops in here. And then we have the Mars Orbiter. Mars Orbiter, an amazing whiskey. It is our way of honoring ISRO's mission Mars. ISRO is the Indian Space Research Organization. So our master distiller, Michael D'Souza, is a huge fan of ISRO. So this is to commemorate the mission Mars. That's why we had the Mars Orbiter. Basically, very limited number of bottles, on upwards of 300 to 350 bottles only, because we just used 2 casks. So we had one of the oldest cask in the cellar, and we had one of the most exquisite peated whiskies in the cellar. So married them together, and that's how Mars Orbiter was born. He used to retail at 40,000 here, about 38,600 in Goa. And the reason that I do not have a bottle here is because we sold out all the bottles that we had, right? So apart from these, we also work with numerous other clubs and retailers to have single cask releases or exclusive releases. So that's about the whiskeys that we have. Like I said, you know, this bottle specifically, this is being created for Svenska Whiskey Förbunden. So this is exclusively for the Swedish market. So what you see here, the nectar is basically exclusively for Nectar, the retailer. So basically they can, you know, sell it or gift it to their customers and clients and stuff like that. So that's what we work with Single Malt Amateur Club with cask number 6028. We work with Malt Society of Arabia for Mitra. So again, hopefully Flairology, you know, will soon invest in a cask and have your own, you know, cask as well. So that's the end of the tour. I hope you had a good time. You know, I had a wonderful time walking around the distillery and explaining the different processes. So I hope it was, you know, of use to you. And again, I'd like to invite each and every one of you to the distillery. If you have plans of coming into Goa, come to the distillery. If not, make plans of coming to the distillery and come to Goa. Either ways, you know, and you know me now, so I'll be more than happy to take you around and show you around. And this time we will do some tasting for sure. No more virtual tasting, right? So, guys, if you have any questions or answers, if you have any questions, please do, you know, ask
Yes,
me.
we do.
Meanwhile, I'll sip on some whiskey.
Yeah, Pankaj, we do have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So we will start up with the question and answer session. If you guys can go ahead, type it in the chat. We'll keep answering your questions.
Edited sort of weather today.
I can see that, Pankaj, the way you're sweating. I guess it's getting warmer and warmer every day.
It's Angel's chair.
Yes,
Sorry?
it is.
Angels, yeah. This should be the devil's cut, man. I'm too. I know. You can't associate my name with angels.
But yeah, we have few of us, so we can actually go ahead one by one, ask questions instead of just typing.
What is the process for becoming a distiller?
Oh, wow.
For becoming a distiller, yeah, that's a very interesting thing, because most of them tend to assume that you need to have a science background, which actually in all its practicality, you need to have a science or a chemistry background. But again, it depends on your interest, because I know of at least 3 to 4 distillers who do not have any background in science. So it's basically your interest, what you're passionate about. So if you're specifically wanting to become a distiller, chemistry should be your A game. Chemistry. You should know the different types of tests that biochemistry especially, that should be your top game. Single production of a single batch spirit, right? So spirit, you calculate it yourself. So forget about the malting process, because it's already been malted. So the milling takes about 4 to 5 hours. Then we have the mashing, about 5 to 6 hours. Then the fermentation of 72 hours. Then the distillation of 12 hours. So my math is bad. You could calculate all of it and put together. Louis, how's your math?
So, bro. So. That's why
Or
I became a
Aditya?
bartender.
Okay. So all in all, about 5 days. 5 days. I'm talking only about the new make spirit, because after 5 days, it'll take another 5 years for us to. Okay, sorry, I'll have to go into the chat now. What is the duration of time? Okay, so what about the idea of using Paul John whiskey in a cocktail? Go crazy, actually. See, whenever you're tasting whiskey for what it is, I would always prefer it neat, to know what the whiskey is. But once I figured it out, and if I'm a fan of cocktails, of course, please go crazy.
Yeah, so I always say this to
Okay.
people who ask me why use a Paul John in a cocktail. It's because as a bartender, I'm sure few of you have already worked or are about to work. You'll always face a problem that your customers would complain, saying that there is very less alcohol in my cocktail. But this will never happen with a Paul John drink, because with 47% alcohol in it, that's more than enough to overpower any other addition that you put into your cocktail.
So what are the courses, I think Shubhankar has asked, what are the courses that to become one of us? To become one of us, drink a lot, that's all.
One of us,
Yeah.
there are
During
different
the interview, they'll ask you how much do you drink. They say,
there's a lot behind just becoming one of us. There is a marketing team which takes care of the marketing. Pankaj himself is at the distillery. He looks after the distillery, and there's a team which looks after the production of it. There is a team like me who's actually looking after the sales. Without sales, I don't think anybody would survive. Even the master distiller, for that fact.
yeah.
So yes, it's a big thing. It depends on what you are interested in doing, and then go from there. To say, I started as a bartender. Today I am selling whiskey for Paul John. So there is a huge way and a lot of scope you guys can choose from. It depends what you are good at. Yeah. So.
And I think all the top brand ambassadors in the globe are all bartenders itself, so
Yeah.
no two ways about it. But again, like Sergis very well said, it depends on what you want to do. Because if you want to be just a blender, if you want to get into the blending part of it, where everything is made, the whiskey's been matured, and you're just blending it and creating a flavor profile, then your sensory skills have to be, in that A game kind of a thing. So again, it depends on which process you want to choose. And
so as a bartender, you already have the skill. As a bartender, you need to be multi-skilled. You need to be a good listener. You need to be a good person. You need to be a good mixologist. You need to be very good at sales, upselling. So you already know the trade. Now you can choose what you guys want to do. Yeah, you are already you have an amazing mentor in Pankaj with you guys. So you have already the best start that you could ever get. So now it's up to you guys what you want to do and which field you want to pick up in this. There is a lot. It's huge. This industry is vast. So don't you worry. This is just the beginning. So right now, concentrate on making good drinks and understanding and explaining the drinks to your guest, and then take it from there. Yeah. When is the distillery
so
opening
when
for
is the
visitor
distillery
center?
opening? So hopefully by next week, because I think all of the establishments have got the permission to open right now, and Go also laying down this, and by next week we should start. Procedures followed for pricing of the bottle. So basically, pricing of the bottle would completely depend on the making of the product as well. So we are going to factor in costs if it's a peated or unpeated whiskey. Because if it's peated whiskey, we have imported peat from Scotland. So more than the cost of the peat, it's the shipping cost that would, be enormous, huge cost for us. And also the fact that which cask have we used, because if we've spent a lot more on that particular cask, if we've released a whiskey which was matured or finished in a sherry barrel or in a virgin oak cask, so basically all of those factors come into play. And more importantly, or I would say the most important aspect is the angel share as well. Because the amount of loss that we have, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah, again, there is another factor to it. It depends on the state laws as well. As Pankaj said, Nirvana in Goa is around 1,200 rupees. Pankaj,
Yeah, 1,500. Yeah,
1,500. The same bottle in Mumbai is 3,000, 2,950. So
True,
it
true.
depends which state you guys are in. If any of you all are in Chandigarh, it is the cheapest there. So it again depends, the kind of taxes, and that's why it is MRP, right? We have to keep our profits, keep all the thing, all the taxes, all the expenses, transportation, all of it. So yeah, in fact, we have started to import 3 brands, as you saw in the earlier training from Sazerac, US. We have to pay 160% of taxes other than the transportation of it. So imagine a 100 rupee bottle becomes 160 rupees plus traveling and transportation added to it. So there's a lot of factors to it. Yeah. What's the next question?
Next
How
question.
does 1 year aging in Goa equal to 4 years aging in Scotland? Oh, that's a wonderful question, Pankaj.
So basically, it's to do with the extraction. So what happens here is I gave you the example of angel share. Angel share 2% in Scotland and about 8 to 10% in Goa. So that extra bit of heat and humidity also tends to mature our whiskeys faster. How? Basically, here we have hotter days and cooler nights in the cask cellar and all of that. So there is more, expansion. The molecules tend to expand when it's hot and it tends to contract when it's cold. So there is a lot of chemical reactions that keep taking place, and the extraction from the wood also. So normally when the temperature is set in this particular climate, the extraction also depends on the humidity and the temperature around. So for us, we are able to extract more. So similar extraction, like what we extract from, okay, I do not have the samples. Otherwise, it would have been easy for me to show you how a 1-year-old whiskey is different from a 2-year-old whiskey. So the extraction that we have in 1 year is equivalent to the extraction that you get in 4 years in Scotland. So that's the main difference of why our whiskey is, we are an NAS whiskey, and why, our whiskey is mature faster here in Goa. I hope that suffices.
Next question is, for how many times can we use a barrel for maturation?
See, barrel for maturation, actually, here at the distillery, we use it only thrice. Like I said, first fills for limited editions and select casks, first and second fills for flagship expressions, and third fill right now only for Nirvana. So what we do is, like, after that, we send it to our multiple distilleries. So at the beginning, I told you we have Original Choice and Mountcastle, Grand Duke, Black Pelican, different other brands as well. So we send these casks there. Because in India, there is no hard and fast rule for a whiskey to be matured. Most of the whiskeys that we're drinking are technically rum, anyways, in India, right? So basically, we use those casks are there. But if you were to ask me genuinely, how many times can I use a cask? As much wood as there is, for me to burn. Because what happens after the second and third fill, the extraction becomes lesser. So what most of the distillers do, they char it or re-char it. They scrape off the charred particle and they rechar it actually until there's a particular level actually of the hemicellulose. Until you can rechar it. That's why I always joke. Until you have wood to burn, you can always use a cask, because you keep recharring it and all of that. But maybe like it depends on the place also, because a cask here that we matured for the past 10, 12 years, it goes through multiple repairs because of the excess heat and humidity. There's warping of the wood, there's leakages and stuff like that. So it all depends on all of these. So there are certain whiskies which are 50, 60, 70 years old, in Scotland, they claim and all of that. So obviously the cask, I'm guessing, must have been at least 60 years old. But here at the Paul John whiskey, just 2 fills or third fill maximum. So about like 10, 12 years maximum, because we haven't reached 15 years yet. So once we reach 15, then I will say maximum 15 years.
Yeah. So anyways, next time you guys reach Pune at the academy, you can actually see the wood of the barrel. Somehow we have managed to get that to Pankaj. So next time when you be there, you maybe get to see the actual barrel that we use. So yeah, the next question is, how difficult is it to sell bottles at such a less cost when the angel share is so high? So Atharva, yes, we first thing first, the bottles are not really at less cost because we put in so much effort, and it takes a lot of time to make our whiskey. It's not like Pankaj said, it is not rum that we call whiskey. It's actually a proper single malt which takes time to make and a lot of care to make. So the bottles are little expensive. We have bottles starting from 1500 going up to 75,000, and maybe in couple of years we will have something more expensive as well, and unique. So yes, it is a difficult task, because when I, as a sales point, when I go to someone and say I'm a brand from India, and we make our whiskeys in Goa, so the first thing that would come to your mind is that Goa sasta daru rahega yaar. So when I say 5,000, it's I start from 3,000, and all my Brilliance edited bold is 5,000 and 5,500. It really is a task, but yes, that is why we are after you guys. We get to, whenever we get a chance to speak to all you guys, because you are the ones who will be representing our brand and talking to people about our brand. Now I'm sure you have this confidence that okay, Paul John is a good brand. You guys have seen it yourself. So yes, you guys will help me in selling this now. Yeah. So next question is, how are Paul John whiskies different from other India brands? Oh wow.
So, okay. So basically, there are two different factors in here. When you talk about Indian brands, majority of them don't even actually have a genuine whiskey in their portfolio. So we have handful of them to compare, because Paul John is a single malt whiskey. And if you can think of, there are what, four or five other brands in India who are making single malt whiskeys. So let's compare apples with apples right now. So in terms of what makes us very unique and different is the fact that the ingredients that we source. We are the only distillery wherein we have 100% Indian sourced ingredients right now. So we've used the barley, and that also it's a unique thing in its own, because most of the, whereas we use 6 row barley, our whiskeys are they tend to be more viscous. They tend to carry a better mouth feel, and obviously the flavor profile. And every whiskey is unique because of the terroir that it's being matured in, because obviously the place and the environment also affects the flavor of the whiskey. So unless there's a distillery bang opposite us, right now there's nobody else who can claim that they're using 6 row barley, they're using ingredients all in all sourced within India. Because most of them, what they do, in case they have their own peated release, they get the peated barley from Scotland itself, but we just import peat from Scotland, and we are experimenting with different things. So hopefully we should get to a point wherein we can say everything is Indian, but it's never going to happen, because you need the cars, you need the peat from Scotland and all of that. But wherever we can we can be vocal for local. We've always been that. Even much before this whole slogan was created of vocal for local, we were vocal for local before that. Blended malt whiskey, I don't think so, because our core competency has always been single malt whiskey, and we would want to stick to it. Maybe different types of finishes. I'm really excited because we've experimented with different brewers. We've experimented with a brewery, I think, based in Bangalore, Windmills, if I'm not wrong, wherein we sent our
We have one in Pune as well.
Windmills, right? Okay, but I think this was with the Bangalore one that we experimented, wherein we sent our cask and they matured, I think, they stout in it, and then they sent it back, and we are maturing our whiskeys in it. We worked with coffee mechanics, wherein they've created a couple of coffee brews. They matured their coffee brews in our cask. We worked with some chocolatiers as well. I'm guessing you must have heard of Navi Luna in Mysore, wherein they mature their cacao beans in the first fill cask. They sent it back to us. We matured our whiskey. So there's always that experimentation that will happen. But in terms of blended malt whiskeys, I doubt, because for us to be blended malt, then we have to take the help of other single malt distilleries as well, right? So at the moment, we would want to stand on our own right, you know. So, and I don't think a single malt whiskey distillery would ever aim to be a blended malt whiskey. They would want to be the best single malt whiskey ever there is. So I hope that answers your question. I have a question for you guys. When are you coming down to Goa? Now the borders are open, right?
Very soon, rather desperately waiting to come down to Goa. Need a vacation from a vacation now. We are tired
Oh, yeah.
so much that we need a vacation now.
Seriously. Wow, that's very honest.
And thank you so much, Pankaj.
Thank
You've been so interactive, so fun.
My pleasure.
And really, I really appreciate your entire tour. Apart from that, you've been sweating and then still you're going on around and around. But then it was fantastic. It actually gave me a feel that as if I'm actually in Goa and that vibes of Goa were there with you.
Nice.
And thank you
Nice.
so very much. Thank you so very much.
I think it's got to do with the name Pankaj. I think it's just the name, right?
True.
Cool.
But I'm really excited. I would want to. I think Flairology. We did this
Yes.
thing group here, right? Last year.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember we had Flairology. So,
So
but
we'll be
again,
doing-
you didn't come down, right? Pankaj,
No, I
last
wasn't
time?
there. I wasn't there. I travel most of the time, but then this time I'll definitely make it to the distillery. I want to see myself.
You should. Oh yeah, a crazy number of whiskeys to try also.
Yeah. That's one perk of coming there.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so very much, Louis.
Hey, my
Thank you so
pleasure.
very much, Pankaj, and the
Hey,
entire team of
pleasure.
Paul John for taking us through the entire brand and the process. Thank you so very much. We look forward to see you as well in real time, in real life.
Sure, Pankaj.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the same.
Thank
I
you
guess
so very much.
Thank you again, guys.
guess all you guys enjoyed the session. In case you have any more questions or anything, please direct it to Pankaj and I will get back to you guys. All right. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
guys.
Thanks
Thank you.
again. Thanks, Pankaj. Thanks, Rohit.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.